Hi, everyone. Great to be here. He's absolutely correct. I have no life outside work. So my name is Alon. I'm the CEO of SSV Labs. We are the core team behind SSV Network, which is the largest DVT network on Ethereum today. We have this mission of decentralizing or creating an infrastructure to decentralize Ethereum validator set as much as possible. But today I actually want to talk with you about one of the biggest changes we're going to make to the protocol. It's a foundational change which will transform completely what infrastructure is, in my opinion, how different services look at infrastructure, and more specifically, how SSV is looked at and considered. This change is so foundational, we call this, we basically frame it as SSV becoming this ETH accrual token. And DVT become this ETH accrual layer. It's so impactful that within a few months, you'll be able to stake SSV and get around 30% rewards in ETH staking on SSV. And that's a foundational change both for DVT and SSV as well. And I want to walk you through how this looks like and how it works. And so we set out 4 years ago to change the infrastructure for staking on Ethereum, transitioning from a single point of failure setup to a distributed setup where a cluster of independent operators can coordinate and operate validators. So instead of running on one machine or one entity billions of dollars, you now have the ability to run it on independent operators, decentralizing the most basic element of staking on Ethereum, which is the validator itself. That transformed completely how different institutions, solo stakers, exchanges, and so on run their infrastructure, which is extremely important. The problem is, how do you scale it, right? So when we launched SSV, we knew that the vision is great, but how do we scale it? Especially in the world where staking APR started out back in December 2020 in double digits, but very quickly kind of transitioned into single digits, and today it's around 2.8, 2.9%, right? And so every validator, every staker out there knows that they want to maximize the amount of rewards they get. And so in order to scale up SSV, what we did was we created this thing called the Incentivized Mainnet Program. The Incentivized Mainnet Program enabled every validator on SSV to get a boost in rewards in SSV tokens. This was foundational and transformative for SSV, and it enables us to grow quite rapidly since we launched about 2 years ago. So much so that today SSV is the second largest infrastructure provider or staking infrastructure provider on Ethereum. Roughly 14% of Ethereum, 5 million ETH staked, and 1,900 mainnet operators. Just to put it into perspective, if you take just the right number, 1,900 mainnet operators on mainnet, that's in the top 3 blockchains in the world in terms of number of unique operators. If you look at the number of ETH staked and compare it to DeFi protocols, this is in the top 3 DeFi protocols. So this scale was quite remarkable, and this vision of a decentralized infrastructure layer for Ethereum was amazing. And we couldn't have done that without our great partners out there. Some of them, obviously you recognize, some of them are sitting right here. And this was great. This means that we can actually get adoption for DVT from solo stakers all the way to the biggest institutions out there. And as an alpha, I can tell you that we have a bunch of more coming up in 2026, which will blow your mind. And so this was incredible. But it's also created a cost on SSV holders. So in order to facilitate that SSV staking, we created inflation to the token, and it was as a cost to the SSV holders, right? And that created 3 different challenges. Challenge number 1 is that every validator on SSV pays what is known as a network fee. Basically, a fee they pay, and that fee is denominated in SSV. The thing is that fee is calculated as a percentage out of the ETH staking APR, right? And so the divergence between SSV and ETH creates instability for operators and validators because it changes how much you pay in actual SSV. So it creates friction. The second thing is kind of an excitement disconnect between the growth of the product and the people using it and the greater SSV community. And we wanted to create this alignment between the various actors on SSV in order to make the product better, make everything more aligned, and continue growing the product at the pace we're already at. And that's where SSV staking comes into play. We frame it as an ETH accrual token for a very good reason, because it's an ETH accrual token, meaning that you stake SSV and you get rewards in ETH. You secure SSV, you help the protocol grow, and you get ETH in rewards. And the way it works is quite simple. One is we're going to transition towards paying the network fee in ETH. So it's going to create stability for operators worldwide, and it's going to make things much, much easier to onboard to SSV. The second thing is we're going to enable SSV staking, and that's going to secure the SSV protocol, and we'll talk about it in a second how that works. But the important point is that all of that ETH rewards are going to go back into the SSV stakers. The cool part about it is because of the scale of SSV, and because we believe that in the next 18 months, SSV will probably double in its TVL, if you plug in the current numbers, assuming, let's say, today SSV staking was available, if you plug in today's numbers, you'll get above 30% rewards yearly paid in ETH. Let me repeat that. If you stake today, if SSV staking was available today and you would stake, assuming 25% of all SSV staked, which is a huge amount, you get more than 30% rewards in ETH, in actual ETH. That's unheard of. Just as a reference, if you stake Ethereum, you get 2.8%. So that's more than 10x than that. And so that's a very, very powerful primitive for DVT infrastructure as a general to create this ETH accrual layer across everyone who's doing staking on Ethereum in general, and we want them to transition to a more decentralized infrastructure. This is so cool that we actually created this fun little calculator you can go and play around with. Just go to ethaccrualtoken.com. And the cool part about it is it fetches all the current information from the market and outputs what it thinks the rewards rate will be in ETH. But you can also project forward. So imagine that we're growing SSV, and we are, and hitting 8 million ETH staked in 2026. That will change completely the rewards rate in ETH. Imagine now SSV recovers and goes back to 5K. That completely changes the economics and rewards rate for SSV staking, and so on and so forth. The scale of SSV enables us to capture so much of that value and then distribute it back to SSV stakers. And again, putting SSV or positioning SSV, the token, to be this ETH accrual token, which is quite interesting. The way it actually helps the SSV protocol is solving two challenges that we think will make the product much better. The first one is that because we're doing all of our accounting on-chain, that means that you need to have some kind of a balance to pay your fees, and there's what we call a runway for your fees within the SSV network. The problem is that it requires a liquidation collateral. So basically, you need to put out a bunch of SSV upfront, and then from that, it's going to take slowly but surely the fees out of your account. That liquidation collateral is per validator, and it's actually a friction point. It has nothing to do with making the product better or worse. It's just an accounting thing, right? But we can solve that because with SSV staking, you'll be delegating your vote to a committee of oracles, decentralized oracles, out of the 1,900 operators on SSV. And that committee will actually be doing two things. One, it's going to eliminate completely the liquidation collateral, but more importantly, it's also going to update real time the balance per cluster, enabling paying the fees in ETH. And so by doing SSV staking, not only are we creating this ETH accrual token, but we're actually solving a real-world challenge we have within the product and making it more streamlined. Removing the liquidation collateral makes it much more efficient and easy to onboard to SSV. And so with all that, this is something we've been working on and researching the past few months. And I want to kind of share with you the roadmap ahead. So we've been researching this and kind of simulating and modeling for the past few months. Up until end of year, we're going to finish up with implementation. And early next year, we're going to start with audits and DAO votes to actually apply those changes. And we are hoping that by mid to end of Q1, SSV staking will be available for everyone who's holding SSV to participate and start accruing ETH through SSV staking. And so if you're already on SSV or thinking about joining on SSV, please visit us on our website, keep up to date with what we're doing. We're not only changing the way you do staking, but also we're redefining, I think, what the relationship between infrastructure and the greater DeFi community